battling the relentlessly negative doom and gloom news media. It's the Nick Stenger Show, coming to you live from the Stenger Family Office headquarters. It's your host, Nick Stenger.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Nick Stenger Show. My name is Nick Stenger. We are Stenger Family Office. For the past 44 long years, we've made it our family's mission to deliver you both clarity and confidence to help secure your financial future. Here you are back on episode 186. Don't fear the downgrade. We'll get into it in just 1 second. But before we do, don't forget to like the show, share it, and most importantly, subscribe. If you are watching on YouTube with us, don't go any further here until you hit the subscribe button. We so appreciate it. Helps us get it to more and more people. Thank you to our audience who's been coming back each and every week. We started these in the height of COVID when there was nothing to do and everybody was locked down. We said, let's do a show. Didn't think it would last this long. And here we are, 5 years later, still going strong. We got Producer O running the show here now for us. And I will just remind you, we do have a couple of tremendous events very soon coming up. Next week on the 29th, we've actually got our virtual open house. That is for prospective clients. If you're a current client, you may enjoy it as well. We're going to tell you all about Stenger Family Office, how we do things, and what the Stenger Family Office difference is, what our portfolios look like. Don't miss that thing. If you've been thinking about doing business with Stenger Family Office, Go on the virtual open house on the 29th. That will be coming up very, very soon. And then very soon after that, we're going to hit October. I know it's hard to believe. It's just May. We're going to be in June very soon. Then it's going to be October. And what happens in October? We have Investor Day. I have been telling you about this each and every week before the official invite has gone out. They will go out next month. You'll get something in the mail. You'll get something in an email from us. But do not miss Investor Day because it's our flagship event. It's our best event we do all year round. We got 3 guest speakers coming in from all over the place, from New York City, from Kansas City, from all over the country. You are coming in from all over the country. You usually have people all, from Florida and from Washington State and from Tennessee and from Indiana and from Texas. So this is the one big gathering throughout the year that we do to tell you what we're doing behind the scenes in the investment portfolio. October 16th and 17th. But here's the deal. When that invite shows up in your mailbox, it is going to be basically almost full. I'm telling you now, make sure you register. You can pre-register. You can call Katie Poulos. We call her Katie the Greek. Call Katie. She will get you signed up. But you have got to make sure that you are on Investor Day, October 16th and 17th. All right, that's enough of that. Let's jump in. Don't fear. That is the title of this episode. Don't fear. I told you there'd be 10 more scare stories this year. And here we are. We hit 5,950. Now we're back down to 5,700 on the S&P. And I said we've got a long ways to go here in the Trump presidency. There's going to be some volatility. There's going to be some pain. There's going to be some downside. There's going to be some choppiness. But most importantly, I told you last week, we were going to have 10 more scare stories this year, maybe more. There's going to be 10 next year. There's going to be 10 after that. So have we learned our lesson yet? I hope we have with the first announcement of tariffs. When the S&P got to 5,000, our most valuable lesson we should have learned was do not panic. Do not sell. What did I tell you every week? Get the clarity and confidence. Get the data mass statistics so you don't jump off your plan. And most of you did not do that. So I hope we all can remember these times when we remember things do come back, no matter how bad they seem, no matter how much it seems like the world is coming crashing down all over us. Times are going to get better. Okay. And so the trick that the media likes to play on us is that times will never get better, that this time is different. We talked about the big lie last week. Well, this time I'm going to tell you, don't fear the downgrade. So the downgrade came out from Moody's, and that is one of the 10 scare stories that you're going to continue to see. But before we jump into the actual data behind that, I want to just go back to the Bible days. It's a 2,000-year-old book, okay? And one thing has not changed since the Bible was originally written, and that's that human nature has been the same for 2,000 years. And what does God tell us in the Bible? John 14, let not your heart be troubled. In fact, the Bible says 100 times, do not be afraid. John 14, let not your heart be troubled. Isaiah 41, do not be afraid. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? That's what we have to remember when we go through these doom and gloom times. So when you see those 10 scare stories, when you see all the reasons to panic, just remember, fear is built into our human nature. But the question for you is, am I going to react? Am I going to make decisions based on that fear? Okay, let me give you the data behind these downgrades. Specifically, 2011, Standard & Poor's downgraded U.S. debt. Since 2011, since the downgrade, the S&P 500 is up 377%. You're going, oh my goodness, what a time to buy. 2013, Fitch came out, they downgraded the U.S. debt. And you're saying, what happened since 2013? Well, the S&P is up 245%. 2025, here we are. Moody's is the new one, and they say the U.S. debt should be downgraded. And we have a big question mark. We don't know if the S&P is going to be up 200%, but I would tell you 10 years from today, I think it's going to be pretty close. And by the way, I think today is another tremendous buying opportunity if you're a patient investor. If you're watching the show right now, it is Friday, May 23rd, 2025. During market hours, the S&P is around 57.50. That's a tremendous buying opportunity. Now, maybe you bought at 5,000. That was even better. But when you fast forward over the next 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to be happy you stayed on your plan. Just like 2011 was this massive buying opportunity, just like 2013 was this massive buying opportunity, today, I believe, will be no different because you don't invest in the U.S. economy. Just remember that. You invest in companies, and companies are real operating models. They're a claim on real assets. And so when a company has cash on its balance sheet and goodwill and property, plant, and equipment, and they've got earnings and they've got revenue and they've got all these people that are just brilliant going to work every day to work the problems that they face. Williams Sonoma, not telling you to go buy it, but Williams Sonoma's CEO, they've done a tremendous job managing that company. They're going to have to deal with tariffs. She was on CNBC the other day. They interviewed her. They said, what do you think about tariffs? And she said, we're working the problem. We are working overtime. We are figuring it out. We're going to have a solution shortly. That's what companies do. So why is it never a good idea to panic and sell when the world looks like it's crashing down? Because we're not investing in the economy. We're investing in companies, and companies are run by people. And those people are just like you and me. They're going to work every single day to figure out solutions to problems. So that's why these opportunities usually result in good buying opportunities for patient long-term investors. Same thing with all these companies on Wall Street. Now, Apple is facing this next big round. Trump is threatening them, saying, if you don't make the iPhone in the U.S., we're going to slap another 25% tariff on you. And Apple says if we move the production back to the U.S., the iPhone's going to cost 25% more. So let's see how it all plays out. But I would guess that there's more than meets the eye here. And I think there's been more than meets the eye with tariffs in general, that you should not take everything right at surface level. The media has been so damaging this cycle, saying, oh, the world's coming to an end. These tariffs are going to push us off a cliff. And they parade out their line of experts out there that say this is why tariffs are horrible and awful. And the Smoot-Hawley Trade Act in the 1920s pushed us into a depression, without talking about all the other problems that we had leading up to the depression too. And I'm not saying tariffs are the best way to go about things. Actually, I think there's easier ways to do it, like restricting U.S. investment in Chinese publicly traded companies. If you really want to go after China, there's a little easier way to do it. Just do that. And I think they're going to have tremendous problems overnight. And the other thing, and look, Trump came out and announced tariffs on everybody all at the same time. Then he went and made his deals individually. I think actually, nobody's asking for my opinion on this, but I think actually the better way to have done that was to say, hey, let's have a united Western front. Against what? Against communism. And when's the last time we had a united Western front against communism? Was during the Ronald Reagan years. Tear down that wall. And that's what we should have done. Okay. But now we're doing it. And this is what's happening behind the scenes. And so if you only listen to the headlines, if you only watch the flying ticker tape on your screen, I think you're missing the deep down inside window on what's happening behind the scenes with these talks. And I think the real objective of these tariffs, of these negotiations, is to have China play fairly and come to the table. And they are quickly coming to the table. There are people out there who are Chinese economy experts who say it's so bad now for President Xi. It's so scary for his top advisors. He doesn't even listen to people who tell him what's going on in the outside world. And so believe it or not, we'll see if that's true over the next couple months and years. But President Xi has tightened his grip on the Chinese people. And so more and more people than ever before are leaving the CCP at record all-time pace. And you look at some of the data points that we do get, because we don't get a lot of real data points, but you look at some of the underlying fundamental points and you say, how can things be all rosy over there? I just don't see it. And I also don't see it with the luxury good sales plummeting. I don't see it across the board, especially when you look at the real estate crisis they're having. And so all that to say, I think we are in the driver's seat when it comes to these negotiations. Could be wrong on that, but from what I see, I've been telling you this for 4 or 5 years. I've told you to avoid Chinese stocks like the plague, and you have, thankfully, and that's been the right call. China's having a pop this year because they were coming off of a base effect of being terrible for years and years and years. But if you still look at the Chinese 5-year stock market performance number, it is negative. Negative return, while the S&P is up almost 200%. Some stocks are up 300%, and China is negative. So that was the right call. What's been the other right call? And not to beat a dead horse here, but we've been talking about this consistently on the show. Watch out for those long-term bonds. And so what I want to tell you is I think we're entering what really happened at the end of the 70s and the early 80s, which was the Ronald Reagan years, trying to clean up the mess from the 70s. Now, Jimmy Carter gets blamed for most of the problems of the 70s. That is fair. He does deserve some of the blame, but he doesn't deserve all of the blame. A lot of the blame in the 70s came from the LBJ years with the Great Society. And so a lot of the things that FDR did before that were not supposed to be permanent. We were never supposed to have Social Security forever. We were never supposed to have Medicare forever. And the way it was pitched to people was, oh, you're going to buy into this program and then it's going to be there for you when you retire. Well, if that's true, remember, you're putting 6.2% of your paycheck into Social Security. Your employer is matching that at another 6.2%. Let's say you average 50, 60, 70 grand for your entire career, and you were just putting in 12, 13% a year into Social Security like a middle-class family would. Well, you would have double what you can pull from Social Security when you got to retirement age. Well, that's not the case. You make maybe a couple thousand a year when you go to take your Social Security out. So where'd all the other money go? Well, Social Security has become a welfare program. And so, look, I doubt Trump will be able to fix a lot with Social Security. I highly doubt it. It's a very sensitive topic. But there are some structural issues with it where people would go on Social Security at 60 years old and average life expectancy was 65 or 66 or 67. Well, that's all changed. Now you could go on Social Security at 62. And if you live, a lot of people live in their 80s, 90s even. And if you are on Social Security for 20, 25 years, or maybe even 30 years, it's just not sustainable. Okay. And so I think at some point, some president, if it's not President Trump, will have to face the music and deal with some of these issues. Some of the other things they're trying to address in this one big, beautiful tax bill, and whether you like it or not, is some of the issues when it comes to how many people are riding the wagon in the United States versus pulling the wagon. And so that's what they're trying to address. Now, this all happened in the 70s. We had a 37 to 38% increase in the money supply to pay for these social programs and the expansion of the federal government in the 70s. All of a sudden, Arthur Burns became Fed chair, and we had this massive run-up in inflation. He raised interest rates temporarily to deal with it. He cut way too soon, and it wasn't until the 80s when Paul Volcker became Fed chair and then Ronald Reagan eventually became president that we had to go from cut interest rates to raise to 19%. Some of you remember this. You remember the 19% interest rates. Now, I'm not suggesting we're going to 19%, but I have suggested for a very long time that you are not going to burn off inflation in the economy until you burn off some M2 money supply. And so for low income, for middle class, this is a massive, massive issue. If you look at wages now, the past couple of years under the previous administration, wages started to stagnate. They still are stagnant this year. But at the same time, you've got wealthy people. You've got the top 1%, you got the top 10% that literally aren't affected by these higher interest rates at all. Very little. In fact, they have stockpiles of cash now on their balance sheets that are paying risk-free 4% interest. A lot of people now in this country are making more just in interest than most middle-class families make in earned income. That is a major, major issue when it comes to inflation. So I have said this for a very long time. Be careful with your duration exposure in the portfolio. The longer term your bond is, the longer term you go out on the duration curve, you are exposed to risk. Jamie Dimon, which I have disagreed with him on some of his bear market calls, his hurricane calls, and the rest of it for a few years now, and we've been right on that. But one thing I agree with him on is he says J.P. Morgan is prepared for 7% 10-year Treasury. Okay, I don't think we're going to get to 7%, but I've told you I don't think we're out of the woods yet. And you've seen this now the past couple of weeks. The 10-year is over 4.6%. It just bounced back down a little bit today, but I think it's probable that we actually move back up closer to 5%. Okay, and so what that does is, again, I think it puts pressure massively on the bond market. It puts pressure on retirees, especially if you're in a 60-40 portfolio using traditional bond funds as your fixed income bucket. Watch out. And if you haven't had an X-ray analysis of your portfolio in a while, give our firm a call, give somebody else, a good fiduciary financial advisor, a call who can put you on a plan, because watch out for these 60-40s. I don't think we're out of the woods on those long-term bonds. We want to make sure we've got short duration in the portfolio. What's the risk? Well, the risk is interest rates go down and you get a little bit less yield. But remember what I keep telling you on the show, the point of the safe money in the portfolio is not to grow. By definition, the point of the safe money is to be safe. The point of the growth money is to be growth. So if you're trying to grow the portfolio, do it on the equity side. Don't do it on the fixed income side. And that's the big mistake I see. So make sure you have an analysis done of your portfolio and look at the duration of what you're taking. Now, let's talk about where I think the market's headed. And we could be wrong in the short term, but I want to tell you where I think we're going to be right in the long term and why today specifically is a good buying opportunity. Going into 2025, we had an estimate that profits for 2026 on the S&P 500 would be $320. Even the bearish pundits on Wall Street said $320. We multiplied, well, I should say they multiplied that by about 20, which has been the S&P average P now for the past 5 years. And they said 320 in profits times 20 times earnings would be 6,400 fair value on the S&P. Not bad at all. 6,400 from 6,150. It's not the big 20% jump that we got last year or the year before, but it was tremendously, tremendously fairly valued, meaning we weren't buying the S&P like we were in 1999 at 44 times earnings. And I told you that. I told you that one-on-one if we had a meeting. I told you that on the show. This is not the 1990s, and that was true. Our estimate was a little bit higher. We said 320 in profit times 21 times earnings because we thought that the Fed would moderate, and they have. They have moderated. They haven't raised interest rates. They're talking about cuts. We'll see what happens. I doubt it. I doubt we're going to get cuts, but it's possible. So that put our estimate on the S&P around 6,700 points for the end of 2025. Now, I know it's hard to see a path towards that this year. I would agree in a way. Some of the turmoil the past couple weeks and months have maybe altered that a little bit, but it still doesn't change my math. It still doesn't change the reality that I think eventually, whether it's this year or next year, I think you're going to see 6,700 points. So it's just a matter of timing, all driven now by the Fed. That's the big question mark, is what is the Fed really going to do? But here's what Wall Street says today. Wall Street says today, if we have recessionary profits and profits drop from the 320 estimate down to 300, we would multiply that by a recessionary P multiple of 22, because remember, multiples are going to rise a little bit. That still puts the S&P at 6,600 points. Now, let's talk about where two scenarios. One, by this time next year in 2026, we are no longer going to care about 2026 profits. We're now going to care about 2027 profits. Always forward-looking, always a year in advance. 2027 profits, early estimates say we're going to go up another 10%. We could push 2027 profits to 350. So here's where I'm trying to go with all this. If you take the longer-term estimates of earnings on the S&P and you say we're going to eventually hit 350, I'm not sure when, I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, I don't know when it's going to happen, but eventually we can believe that the long-term history of the S&P would say 350 in profits, and we multiply that by 20. The S&P is eventually going to hit 7,000 points. So despite all the 10 reasons every year to panic, despite all the doom and gloom, despite all the reasons why the world's going to come to an end, I believe very firmly the S&P will eventually reach 7,000 points. If you're a trader and a timer, you are going to waste your entire life away trying to figure out if 5,500 is the right time to get in, or 5,600, or 5,700, or 6,100, and you're going to try and buy and sell and short and time the market, and you are just going to drive yourself crazy doing that. So instead, what I say is this. If you were in at 6,100 and eventually the S&P is going to hit 7,000, great. If you were in it at 5,700, even better. If you got in at 5,000, then the S&P is going to go to 7,000 eventually. You get an A+++. Okay, but who cares about the short-term moves of the market if you're on a long-term goals-based plan? You got your safe money safe to deal with some of these problems in the short term, but at least you've got your growth money truly growing to participate in the upside that will happen. Nobody can predict the future. Nobody can predict the fact that new technology is going to come out, revolutionize the way that we live our lives today, revolutionize the way that companies operate, reduce expenses, boost earnings, and make life better for workers. Nobody can predict this. If you go back to the 1920s, nobody in the 1920s could have predicted the use of driverless cars, for example. Nobody could have predicted the use of the machine learning and AI and all this new software and the cloud and high-speed computing. And I would tell you 100 years from today, you have no idea what the future holds. But the story of America, the story of entrepreneurs in our country is to make life better. So if you buy that narrative, if you buy that story like I do, if you're as passionate about it as me, that the rule of law and personal property rights incentivize entrepreneurship, well, you got to be an optimist. You just have to be a long-term buy and hold and patient and rebalance and take some profits when times are good and reinvest those profits in some things that have gone down and have a goals-based plan that says we have 3 to 5 years of living expenses, safe and secure, and short-term treasuries, and the rest of the money in U.S. companies. Well, you're going to be fine. And by the way, you'll sleep a lot better at night, not having to panic and worry about the up and downs of the market. So that's my message to you. Do not be afraid. Let not your heart be troubled. Be strong and courageous. Things are going to get better. We are going to get out of the woods, and you are going to be happy you stayed on your plan. Don't forget to subscribe to the show if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Apple or Spotify, we appreciate it as well. Share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to register. We got the virtual open house on the 29th and then Investor Day on October 16th and 17th. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.